Because of Phil Silvers, Phil, one of our members and board members, recommended Connie Williams highly, quite highly. So I'm going to give some information about her, some background. Connie is a retired Santa Cruz County public school teacher. She's had a 45-year love affair with the Sonoran Desert. So now I'm going to have to read these things, Connie, so I don't miss anything. And you can add to it. She's a speaker for both Climate Reality and Citizens Climate Lobby. She's on the boards of the Tubac Nature Center, Friends of the Santa Cruz River, and the Anza Trail Coalition. She's a member of the Santa Cruz County Democrats and co-facilitates an Alliance for Action climate focus group there, I'm assuming. So welcome, Connie, and if there's anything you'd like to add, or you can just start right now.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for inviting me. This is a hot topic right now. I've been kind of looking at water for a little while here. And the other piece that I left out, and I've got a couple people in this group that are part of it, is I teach an OLLI class with Connie Aglione. Connie and I co-facilitate that climate action group, and that's actually, we call it the Santa Cruz Valley, because we've got people from Nogales all the way up through Sahuarita in that group. But today what we're going to do is talk about Arizona's water challenges, and I am going to try to talk fast, and I'm not a good fast talker. There are some TV shows that talk too fast for me, but it's not my fault. There's so much going on with water. This is just the way it is. So we're first going to start off talking about Arizona's water sources. We get, our water that we can use is 2% effluent or wastewater, and then we've got 40% of our water that we use is groundwater, and the other about 40% comes from the Colorado River. Now, we've got a little more surface water than you in fact might guess. There's some, especially around the Phoenix area, there's some, which is a good thing, some real surface water, the salt, the agua fria, the Gila. But what we want to talk about today is this Colorado River fraction. Now, this map over here shows the Colorado River Basin. The upper Colorado River Basin, the lower Colorado River Basin. Basically, we're talking about the Four Corners states, a little bit into Wyoming. Nevada is part of it. California is part of it. And then, of course, as I said, the Four Corners states. Now, this says that we get 2,800,000 acre-feet of water. Yeah, they spelled acre-feet. This beautiful graph, ADWR. They spelled acre wrong all the way through. But this was ambitious. When these allotments were set back in the 20s, for the whole period of the study period, there was unusually high rainfall, precipitation. And so everything was over allocated in terms of what we actually have seen as discharge from that river basin. Now, for our purposes, one of the things that's really important is the CAP allocation. For 2021, it's about 1.4 million acre feet, but the CAP is a canal that runs down, particularly brings water Phoenix down to Tucson, and just a little bit south. So we get 1.4 million acre feet. Now this map, this kind of nice little map, is a business as usual scenario. Business as usual means that we continue to spew carbon dioxide emissions that warm our planet. It does not have to be this way, but notice what happens by 2095. That whole Colorado River Basin is in deep trouble. This is a soil moisture map, and that color of brown is barely even on the chart. It is so dry. This is also the same thing that happens to our neighbors to the south. So this is another kind of bad thing. Well, it's a terrible thing. We also see that same kind of data in this report. Now, it was prepared in 2013, but this was the assessment of climate change in the southwestern United States. It was prepared for the National Climate Assessment. And some of you have probably heard Greg Garfin speak. He's at the U of A, and he's talked about this a lot. But what they found, their findings, and again, this is business as usual. If we keep putting unmitigated, if we just keep on spewing carbon dioxide emissions and other greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, this is what we expect. Warming will continue with longer and hotter heat waves in the summer. We'll still have winter cold snaps. They're going to be less frequent, but not necessarily less severe. Think Texas. It could happen here. Late season snowpack will continue to decrease, and droughts will become hotter, more severe, more frequent, resulting in water deficits in excess of those in the last 110 years. This was 2013. A new study that came out a year ago, this was Columbia University's Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory. Park Williams was mentioned in the article that was in the paper yesterday, but this was spring 2020. They said a mega drought as bad or worse than anything even from known prehistory is probably in progress, and this warming climate is playing a key role. Now, I just pulled this map off. This was Thursday, April 8th. This is, you can find these online. This is the drought monitor map. Notice that this is exceptional drought, and the red is extreme drought. Here's our Four Corners area. You can see that last snowfall that we had, it actually helped out the eastern side of Colorado. But here's our Colorado, kind of a little bit here and here. This is our Colorado River drainage or basin, and you can see that it's all in exceptional drought. So this should cause us to have some pretty big concern, and people are feeling it. There was a U.S. Bureau of Reclamation, USBR, put out a paper in just this last December, and they looked at maybe some alternatives for how we're going to deal with what happens in a drought. But one of the things they noted is that Lake Powell and Lake Mead are at 46% capacity due to long-term drought. This is a problem. We can see this 21 years of drought. This came from Aspen Public Radio. They put a nice little graph together, but you can see that for the last 21 years, there has been some level of drought. Anything that's a color is a level of drought for all that time. And this was a article that came out. Tony Davis really is following this in the Tucson paper. Drought getting worse, particularly in the Southwest. This was American Geophysical Union publication. They basically said annual precipitation has dropped by 8 times more here than in the West as a whole. Now, they went back and looked at 1976. I moved to Tucson in 1975, and it seemed to me like we had pretty good rain from 75 to 2000. So this is really particularly worrying if that pretty good rain, in fact, means that a total decline of 3.2 inches in the Southwest compared to just 0.4 inches region-wide. Now, we can expect from this kind of long-term drought shifts in, this was also from the article, shifts in vegetation communities, widespread mortality in grasslands. Here in Rio Rico, I'm in a grassland. I'm really sorry to see that, but I am seeing it already. Intense fires, less forage for cattle, declines in crop yields, less water available for human consumption. So that we have a right to be worried about it. Now, this was from that same Aspen Public Radio piece. really a lovely little graph here. So this, but it's kind of not set up the way a normal graph is. So let me show you this. So it starts over here at the beginning of October, and this is a water year, an annual year, and goes to the end of September. So 1 year across the bottom, and then over here, each year from 2006 to 2021 is assigned a different color, and then they're grouped. So all the kind of purple colors are up here as pretty good water. And the drought or the drier years are down here in the kind of red. Well, you can see that our wettest time of the year is somewhere around May 1st. But what's concerning is this was October 2021. And as of the end of January, we hadn't yet got on the map. So, so this is the state of Utah. This is another soil saturation map. Oops, sorry. And what they said was our soils are so depleted right now that it's not really going to translate to water coming down through the river system. Remember, we saw that big exceptional drought with the Colorado River running through it. Well, the soils are in trouble. This is also kind of important to mention. 4 states, including Utah, I bet, that also get Colorado River water say CAP keeps too much for Arizona. And we say, so we have a contract. In 2007, there were guidelines set that gave us allocation despite the drought. Well, here's a worry. They're described as interim and they only extend through 2026. So in the next few years, there will be negotiations with these 4 cranky states about whether we get to keep as much of our water as we think we are. Now, it's important that we understand how the Colorado River, the CAP water, is allocated. What it's basically divided into is pools with different priority levels. If there are shortages, the allocations are reduced in this order. You might imagine that excess water would be the first to go, so no surprise there. Non-Indian agriculture comes next. And then these are both 3 because M&I, municipal and industrial and tribal, are the last to get cut. Well, here's from the CAP site, and this is what they say the current water usage is. 36% goes to municipal and 28% goes to tribal. So those are the places that really don't get cut. Now this agricultural settlement pool is our NIA. Contributions to Lake Mead won't get cut because if the Lake Mead levels drop, we'll talk about that in a minute, then there are big cuts across the board to everybody. So this won't get cut. So here's this 4% of excess and maybe that non-Indian agriculture. So this was a 24-month study done of Lake Mead. This was put out last August. The projected level by January 1st of 2021 was 1,085 feet. It was in fact 1,086 feet. And you'll notice there's some tiers. There's some things that happen at each of these tiers, and you notice they drop by 25 feet. We are already at tier 0, and in fact, you can see that we're below tier 0. So tier 1 is triggered if we fall below 1075, and we lose 320,000 acre feet of water per year. Now, I just pulled this one off just now, just before we came on. So this was today, and we're at 1083. So we're only 8 feet above, and we've already lost 3 feet since January 1st. Now, every 50 feet, we lose another 80,000 acre feet. So we have a right to be concerned here. Now, there was a white paper put out in February of this year. They looked at this was the Center for Colorado River Studies, looking at the future of the Colorado River project. And they were looking for alternate management ideas here. And this study warned that lower river basin states, that includes Arizona, remember, including Arizona, may have to slash their take from the river by up to 40% by the 2050s. That's over and above that tier thing. Such a cut would amount to about twice as much as the 3 lower basin states, Arizona, California, and Nevada, agreed to absorb in 2019. So, big challenge for us is this threatened CAP allocation due to long-term drought. Now, there's some good news. Back in 1980, there was a water law that established active management areas. Their goal was to achieve safe yield by 2025. Phoenix and Tucson are both active management areas. Santa Cruz County is one. There's one up at Prescott. And there's also some irrigation non-expansion areas. Big one in Pinell and another one over here by Douglas. There's a couple of little pokey ones. But the intent is to slow groundwater use. And one of the big ways they did that was make developers prove that they had an assured water supply for 100 years at least. They were going to store excess unused water in Lakes Mead and Lake Powell, and they were going to reuse water. In other words, they put some money into water treatment plants. They started reusing them in cooling nuclear reactors and other things like that. So that's a good thing. They had a heavy focus on conservation, block rate water pricing, rainwater harvesting, rip out lawns, incentives for water efficient appliances and irrigation, all good things. Exchange excess water. Phoenix was sending some of their water they didn't need because they've got the surface water. And then, of course, they settled tribal water claims, which were outstanding. That had to be done. So that was, it seemed to be working. So in 1957 to 1980, you can see what was happening to our use of the water with kind of steady population growth. Well, the population growth kept on coming, but our water use in the active management and INAs just kept dropping. It was a real success story. So what the heck is this? This started in the fall of 2019, but there were still some more old Tony Davises on the job. Arizona's water system for suburban growth heads towards a train wreck, Babbitt says. As developers built home, Arizona's groundwater levels fell. It can't continue. Well, Bruce Babbitt was the governor of the state when that Arizona 1980 water law went in. He went on to become Secretary of Interior. Good Democrat. We're proud of him. He's done good things. So he's complaining about something that we thought was a done deal. And really worrisome is that Quail Creek in Green Valley was listed as one of the communities that may struggle to find enough water. So what's heck's going on? Well, we go back to this one. Remember this Greg Garfin 2013 assessment of climate change in the Southwest United States. That report also said a near doubling of the population between 2000 and 2050 is going to increase already stressed water resources. And if you go to, I went to Doug Ducey's website about a year ago, and this was the banner headline. Maricopa County population growth is ranked #1 in the US. 2013, nailed it. So there's one more law. 1993, with some shenanigans by some big developers, the Central Arizona Groundwater Replenishment District, I'm going to call it KGARD, was born. Now, KGARD, and we're going to talk about certificates of assured water. There is something, well, there is another term here if you're not in an AMA. But basically, this law allows pumping groundwater for new subdivisions whose developers do not have access to that 100-year renewable water supplies. Okay, so like they don't have access to Central Arizona Project water. So what they do is they are allowed to pay a water district to buy and recharge renewable water someplace else. What could possibly go wrong? Now, I do want to just go back. I do want to talk, this is certificate of assured water is in AMAs and INAs. Outside of that, you'll see certificates of adequate water. And I'm still trying to track down what the difference is. I'll talk about one little piece of it. I do want to just, even though it's going to take us a minute or two, I just want to talk about a nice little Sahuarita government had a presentation in October of 2018. Now that was 3 years ago. If they get anything wrong, we're not going to hold their feet to the fire on it. But they got so many things right that it's worth really mentioning here because it gives me a good way to say some of this stuff anyway. So drought does not immediately equate with water shortage. No. And in fact, we're talking 2050. Okay, so we've got some time to do stuff, and that's an important thing. We are not running out of water today. But they got short-term challenges. 40% of Arizona's water use is from the Colorado River system. Drought conditions for the past 18 years, now 21. Lake Mead, now at historically low, continuing, right? Probability of shortage in the next few years were there. Expected shortage is small compared to Arizona's total Colorado River allocation. That's what they didn't know in 2018 because it's just gotten hotter and drier. And remember, we talked a couple slides back, lower river basin states, including Arizona, bloody ad. Shoot, sorry about that. There it goes. May have to slash their take from the river up to 40% by the 2050s to keep the reservoirs from falling too low. So cause for concern, not unexpected. Yeah, we should be, this is cause for alarm more than concern. It has been up leveled. Now, they also mentioned that there are 5 main providers in Sahuarita and Green Valley. One is designated. Now, that's the community water of Green Valley. They are a designated supplier, which means they get access to CAP water. They're considered M&I. They're part of that 3. That's relatively safe. 4 require certificates of assured water. Well, there's 5 over here, but when I looked, Sahuarita Village Water is just a post office box. The rest of these have robust websites. So I think that either 5 have now got it, or maybe Sahuarita Village Water. So that's good. And the reason there's a problem is because here is the Colorado, the CAP aquifer. And this is Pinell, no, let's see. All of a sudden I have an old age blackout. That Mine Road up there, it's the top of Sahuarita. Somebody will tell me. Anyway, that was as far south as that comes. But there's another piece of this nice little water presentation. They said back in 2018, Sahuarita currently doesn't use CAP water. And they did mention that community water holds the allocation, and FICO. Okay, that's the pecan orchards. They both have these CAP designations. What they did was they joined together to put Pima Mine Road, that's it, to put piping, to put these big pipes that take both FICO and the Community Water Company of Green Valley to get the water from Pima Mine Road all the way down to much closer, kind of, to Green Valley, a lot closer to Sahuarita. So that's a great thing. And then what they've done is they've done some recharge basins. They're doing smart stuff with it. Now, when I talked to the Rotary, Green Valley, the Valle Verde Rotary, one of the pecan orchard guys was there. That was very cool. And he said the master plan for the pecan orchards is turn them into homes. And homes have 50% less water use. Now, I think he said that this is by 2050, so it's not going to happen immediately. I'm not positive about that number, but it's not going to happen immediately. But currently, the orchard is watered with CAP water, not groundwater, or for the most part, not groundwater. So that's a good thing too. So Green Valley municipal treated wastewater being recharged into the aquifer. And this was kind of interesting. The effluent, some of it's discharged into the ground in percolation ponds, but some of it is actually reclaimed and delivered to Robeson Crow Creek for groundwater recharge. So that's kind of interesting. So we can all relax, right? Sahuarita Green Valley water is now being recharged by CAP water. And we've got those certificates of assured water, and the recharge basins are these nice little ponds that can attract wildlife and birds, and all that's great, except it's not. So there's this K-Guard thing that's going to rear its ugly head. This was the fall of 2019. They put out this was the Kyle Center for Water Policy at ASU, the elusive concept of an assured water supply. First thing they say is enrollment in K-Guard has grown far beyond expectations. Well, we just talked about that. K-Guard will struggle to acquire sufficient water supplies for replenishment. We're worried about that. Initially, it was assumed there would be sufficient excess CAP water, but the problem is enrollment outpaced this supply, and other entities that had long-term CAP contracts started using more and more of their rights. So impending shortages of Colorado River water is going to make that even harder. So that's a worry. Pumping groundwater from great depths poses grave consequences. The sweet water is up at the top. The deeper and deeper you get, the more you have to treat it to make it safe for humans to consume. So that's another concern, which will make it more expensive, by the way. So there's a disconnect between the location of pumping and the location of replenishment, and that's a problem. But here's another one. The financial model is at risk. Now in Phoenix, greater Phoenix area, they saw prices jump from $154 per acre foot to $727. K-Guard's consultants have warned of a potential financial catastrophe because of that. Remember what happened in Texas when there was a strong need for natural gas, and all of a sudden you had to buy it on the open market, and people had $10,000 heating bills for the month. Now, hopefully it won't get that bad, but who knows? Because this just came out on January 3rd this year. Wall Street eyes billions in Colorado River water. Investor interest in the river could redefine century-old rules for who controls one of the most valuable economic resources in the United States. Private investors want to bring in or amplify futures markets, millisecond trading, precipitously raise the price of water, exploit volatility. Of course, we've got volatility, drought, failing infrastructure, government restrictions. They will prioritize this last one actually could be good. They'll prioritize municipalities because they can get precipitously raised rates from people who need it. And conservation over agriculture. That could be a good thing to a certain extent. If we're growing high water requiring crops like alfalfa and cotton, that's maybe agriculture is maybe not such a good thing, and they'll pay the farmers not to farm. So farmers may be, I don't know, happy with it. Just a couple more things about that. K-Guard can't turn anyone away by law. New renewable supplies are hard to find. Groundwater depletion is exacerbated, and member homeowners pay an open tab. Remember those 4 designated K-Guard assured supply entities. Okay, so we have to add threats to groundwater supplies in addition to our threats to the Colorado River. And we've got laws that can't protect us from opportunists. The 1993 law did not do us any favors. Now, when I first started looking into this, I noticed that this AMA and INA map, part of the state of Arizona, was pretty small. So I pulled up the registry of wells in Arizona just to see where the wells were. It was quite a shock. There are a lot of wells in Arizona. You'd think in a state like this, there wouldn't be so many. And so when I started looking into what was going on, there were 3 areas that are worth calling attention to. This was, I don't usually follow Fox, but it popped up when I was poking around, and it was actually a very good little article. I'm not going to show this, but water concerns in La Paz County. Middle Eastern farm companies are growing alfalfa. Basically, what they've done is they've come in about tens of thousands of acres. They're growing alfalfa 12 months out of the year, baling it and shipping it back to cows in the Middle East. The problem is they're using so much water that wells are going dry from other little more local farmers. And so there's a big hue and cry about what's going on there. That's La Paz County. If you move north, still the northwestern side of the United States, now we're in Mojave County. This caught the attention of the New York Times Magazine. They called it the Water Wars of Arizona. They said, attracted by lax regulation, industrial agriculture's descended on a remote valley, depleting its aquifer, leaving many residents with no water at all. Well, gee, we just heard about that in La Paz County. This was because of the states, this was Western Water, because of the state's lax regulations, the companies largely operate in secret and most refuse to disclose their plans or the amount of water they are using to the county. Perfectly legal. In AMAs and INAs, you have to disclose. The rest of the state does not. Just want to take just 1 minute because it's interesting about what happened here. It's predictable. Las Vegas real estate developer buys 100,000 acres for homes in 2002, economic meltdown in 2008. So by 2011, he shifts to large-scale alfalfa farming and turns it over. So Stockton Hill Farms comes in. This is owned by a UAE-based conglomerate. They are the #1 exporter of feed and forage products to markets in Japan, China, South Korea, and the Middle East. Some California nut growers have moved in because California's got stringent water laws. And then this is cute. This was a couple of years ago. East Coast hedge fund investors have purchased land in the area for agricultural purposes. No, they didn't. They bought the water rights. Okay, so Mojave County leaders, this was from AZ Central, Mojave County leaders asked the state to help safeguard declining groundwater, and the state basically says they can't. The law forbids regulators from considering future withdrawals from existing large-scale wells. So they can't do forecasting appropriately. We'll come back to that one when we look at the laws. Okay, so this was Channel 4, Tucson. They were looking down in Wilcox Basin. 20 wells have gone dry since 2008. And basically, water usage versus natural recharge. Now, water's measured in acre feet, so imagine an acre on each side, big square, 1 foot deep in water. Well, the amount that's been pulled out of that basin is up to 32 miles high. Well, recharge is about 7 miles high. So we've got a major deficit going on. No matter what people think, it's completely legal. If you start metering things, it'll become regulated. People don't want to see water regulated. She said, instead of advocating for the state law to change, focus instead on what you can control, your own consumption. Well, in Tucson, that might sort of work. This is single family and multifamily is the vast where water gets used. But this was U.S. Bureau of Reclamation. Again, this was a couple years ago, so it may be slightly out of date, but not by much. This is our demand. Agriculture, mining, environmental mitigation or future use, kind of waffly. There's a big thing for golf courses. Oh, shoot, sorry. Come back here. Big thing for golf courses, but here's municipal down here. It's just tiny. It's just tiny. So the other part is supply. This is CAP water. So by 2050, if it's cut by 40%, even for Green Valley water, that's a chunk out of it. This is renewable groundwater, so that's really pretty safe. But the rest of this is icky, treated effluent, impaired water, to be identified. This is just conservation, water management and conservation. So that's a problem. Now I'm in Arizona. I grew up in Page, Arizona. One of my degrees is from Flagstaff, one is from Tucson. Well, I tell you what, if I didn't learn that the 5 C's of the economic health of Arizona are citrus, cattle, cotton, climate, and copper, I'm not worth my salt. Okay, so as you all well know, because of the Rosemont mine, there is gold in them there hills, or maybe copper, or zinc, or lead, or something, I don't know. But there is a lot of it. And not just the Rosemont mine, but it stretches all the way down to the Patagonia Mountains. There is already a big Australian mining company in there that is trying to get a permit like Rosemont, and there are multiple other mining companies that want to do the same thing. Their plan at this mine right here, this is South 32, they've got a big problem. They've got a good bed of ore, and the rest of them are going to have the same problem. It's below the water table. Well, they can't mine below the water table. So what they want to do is pump 1 billion gallons a year of our groundwater out of the ground and just let it go so they can get to the ore. They call it dewatering. Well, that's the same we all share this same watershed. You all in Green Valley, me in Rio Rico. That'll impact the Patagonia Mountains first, and this is a biological hotspot. This is a really important area for biodiversity. We're going to talk a little bit more about biodiversity in a minute, but I just want to mention this one. We haven't had good support from the legislature when that 100-year water supply. Now, Sierra Vista is not in an AMA. They do not have to have an assured water supply. They have to have a 100-year adequate water supply. But Arizona the state still sided with the developer in a water use dispute. This was a 2,000-acre, 7,000 home development. Pueblo del Sol Water Company, I think the development is called Tribute. This was back in 2018, but I particularly want to call your attention to 2 names here, Gail Griffin and Rusty Bowers. Gail Griffin is a real estate developer, and boy, is she pushing it. They have several laws that we'll talk about in a minute that do their best to undercut the weak laws we've already got. So this is another big development going in Benson area. Vigneto means vineyard in Italian. Publicity suggests there's soon going to be a similarity to Tuscany here. 28,000 more homes. Well, the rainfall in Tuscany is 35 inches a year. The rainfall in Benson is 14 inches a year. So for them to go from a desert like this to Tuscany requires groundwater because they don't have CAP water. So imagine what that will do. For one thing, the San Pedro River, which is an absolutely vital source of surface water. This Sierra Madre Occidental is one of the top biodiversity hotspots in the world. It is also a migratory flyway that migrating birds depend on, and it will dry up with all the pumping that is projected for even just these 2 developments. It's 90 mammal species live here that will be gone. We will lose even trees. Okay, so lax out-of-date water laws outside the AMAs and INAs invite exploitation, hurt existing residents and the environment. Now, I want to take 2 minutes and just kind of put this in global context. The U.S. as a whole is only decades away from widespread water shortages. This was Southwest Kansas, but going from Amarillo, Texas, a panhandle of Texas, north is the Oglala Aquifer. At the current rate of groundwater depletion, 35% of the southern high plains will be unable to support irrigation, which may mean they'll be unable to support agriculture as we know it by 2040. That's not that far away. Now, Australia is having terrible problems with both drought and flooding and fires. So that's a problem there. Indian cities are running out of water. More than 600 people dependent on agriculture have been adversely affected by drought condition across great swaths of India. There's a growing water crisis in the global south. More than 40% of the world's population is affected by water scarcity already. Tunisia, Libya, Egypt, Sudan already using as fast as they can the available water that they've got. But the more you pump, if you're at all close to a body of salt water, or if you just start getting lower and lower in the ground, you start bringing salt up. Saltwater incursion from a nearby body of water, or just salty water deeper in, and you pretty soon lose the ability to ever use your field again because of that. Now, we still have some choices. This is kind of my go-to graphic for climate change. We've got three basic jobs. One is we've got to help our communities and each other become more resilient so we can live normal lives and experience development, even though we've got some challenges. We have to survive this. Darn it, I'm really sorry about that. Adaptation, though, is organizing to live with the impacts resulting from climate change, because even if we were to fix it tomorrow, there's still enough stuff up in there that it's going to take a while before we could get back to what we think of as normal. So I am, especially as Democrats, strengthen Arizona's water laws and enforce that 100-year water supply. And then mitigation is, you know, at some point you got to stop what's causing the problem. So we need to slow the rate to which climate change impacts societies around the world, and certainly here in Arizona. And one of the best ways I've heard it talked about is by 2030, reduce our emissions by 50%. That's the easy bit. We can get 50% by 2030, but it's not going to be easy, but it's the easy bit, okay? Then by 2040, another 50%. Not so many, but harder. And then you've got a very, the hardest nuts to crack by 2050. So I just want to talk, I'm almost done here. I'm sorry, this has been kind of long, but I just want to talk a little bit about the legislation, because this is something we can do about. Waters of the U.S., that's what WOTUS stands for. The feds have removed the key Clean Water Act permit requirement for Rosemont Mine. Was just in the paper a couple weeks ago. Basically, what WOTUS is about is the feds have said that ephemeral streams, which are very important to us, you can dump in them. They don't really count as waterways. There's lots of things you can do in ephemeral streams we didn't think of before. So Rosanna Gabaldon, our new U.S. state senator, helped me with this a little bit, HB 2691. She said these are bad bills, so we need to oppose them. This is our good friend Griffin. If you see the name Griffin on a water bill, good chance you're just gonna oppose it anyway. So this has to do with that WOTUS law that I just talked about. What Griffin wants to do is accept that bad law that doesn't protect our ephemeral streams, okay? It excludes most ephemeral washes. So we want to oppose that. 2691, HCR 2003, Colorado River. This is originally, let's see, this was the environmental impacts Oh, this is the, sorry, I moved this out. I moved this slide to a different location. I kind of forgot what it was. This is the Yuma desalinating plant. It's basically, it's old, it's inefficient, it's expensive to run. There's better ways of doing it. So we want to oppose that one. We want to oppose these two. HB 2042, aquifer protection permits. These are injection wells. You can kind of tell from the name of it. This is another Griffin well. Look at that, they're all Griffin bills. According to the Sierra Club, this is going to provide a window for potentially harmful actions to move forward as an appeal denial is issued, and before somebody could seek them to stop, they could get some of these injection wells going. And then HB 2441, another Griffin bill. This is a weird one. It allows you to own water rights and sever them and transfer those water rights to a whole new property. I don't quite understand it, but it represents an end around the sever and transfer process. So I don't quite understand that. We can all learn more about it. Just go vote against it at this point. Some that we do want to support is Senate Bill 1314, groundwater pumping. This is sensible. This is all the information that needs to be reported when you pump groundwater. SB 1765, this is subsequent irrigation non-expansion areas. This, remember we talked about how you couldn't project rates of withdrawal? That fixes this. This is a really important one. And SB 1766, this is adequate water supply, statewide requirements, so it extends the adequate water supply requirements statewide. All very important. Now, there's one more I want to bring your attention to, and just to remind you that Andrea D'Alessandro is our new state representative. You're Democrats, you already know this. This is my water talk. And she's on the Natural Resources and Energy Committee, so real key for this. But she sponsored a bill that I particularly like, HB 2740, and this is watershed health. This considers watershed health uses as beneficial. At the moment, the environment does not get any points when you're considering benefit or, you know, pros and cons of something. Just environmental health, there's nothing that gives it any points. And this appears that it would require the Arizona Department of Water Resources to report on the health of Arizona's watersheds. So support a committee hearing. It's not a bill that's ready to be voted on yet. So, you know, this is our challenge. What can we do to survive a hot mega drought with adequate water supplies? And that's my story. So do we have any questions?
Hi, Connie, it's Mike. Wow, that was one fantastic presentation. Gee, I really
That's
learned.
scary.
I learned so much. Part of it was informative and part of it was just plain terrifying. Geez. You know, I knew about the 1980 law, you know, where it states that there has to be like 100-year, and I thought that was great, and I knew about the other parts of that law, and so I thought Arizona was in a lot better shape. I wasn't aware of what happened with CarGuard in the 1992, and I wasn't aware of how that just opened the door for a lot of private interests. I mean, a lot of our water seems like it's being exposed to just market-driven greed. And
Yeah.
that's really a
Yes.
concern. Very informative.
Yeah.
I've also been following mead, by the way, the problem with mead. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's a real concern. And, you know, it's a canary in the
Coal mine.
Yeah, and it's really depressing, but we do still have some time to do something about it. I really don't want to leave you with the idea that we're all going to
Right.
lose the value of our properties tomorrow, and because it's not like that. But it is time for us to all get busy and learn how to do RTS or whatever it takes to let. Now we're lucky; we've got really good. I'm so happy with Andrea D'Alessandro and Rosanna Gabaldon. I don't know Daniel Hernandez as well, but I'm really happy who we've got for our representatives. But they, you know, they need our support too. So, and I know you guys, if you're here, you're doing it, but you've got friends that aren't here that probably we all do that need little nudges and maybe some specifics to go get involved with or to go weigh in on.
Number one, I was just going to congratulate you on making a difficult subject really digestible, and thank you for that.
Oh, thanks, Doug. And I know you've seen it twice, so I was a little worried you were going to be bored, but it's kind of,
Well, I tell you, I could look at it 3 or 4 times, and I would still have more to take from it. So, well done.
Thank you.
One of the little snippets. Did I understand you to say that the pecan orchards around Saurita are their long-term plan is basically to sell it off for housing?
That's what he said in the Rotary meeting. There was a guy from the orchards, and that was what he said. And I kind of read something about that. Philip looks like he knows something about that. Yeah.
His name is Tim Campbell.
Yeah.
And he's in charge of public relations for FICO. And he's a member of our Rotary Club, and that's why he was attending the meeting at which he spoke. And I would say, Connie, that just in the space of 2 months, you have added so much to your presentation. Incredible. Thank you.
Thank you. That's one of the things that I do kind of pride myself on there, especially with water, because if you're not paying attention, things are happening really fast right now. Suddenly everybody is watching what's going on with water. So I didn't think anybody would notice, but good job, Philip. Thanks for saying it.
But the reason that particular subject bothers me is basically you're taking land that can absorb water and putting hard cover on that land. So all of a sudden you get into all sorts of runoff problems, which are not trivial. Maybe a house uses less water in the first case, but where's the water going to go that falls on the land that's covered in tarmac and various other concretes?
Yeah, but you know what? One of the things that I'm kind of impressed with, because the FICO people have even come down. Remember, I said I'm part of the Friends of the Santa Cruz River, and the Friends of the Santa Cruz River, you know, they're pretty impressed with them because they are paying attention to water quality, water quantity. And there are ways to surface things that are permeable. And there are ways to collect the runoff in these rainwater, just the whole rainwater harvesting. And so I think that they're going to pay attention to how to divert their, how to collect it, how to save it, how to make best use of the runoff that comes off those hard surfaces. But that's a good point, and it's one that we all need to pay attention to as any new development goes in. Make sure they do the rainwater harvesting, the recharge basins, the collection basins.
Interested. I mean, I've felt, I'm from Kentucky originally, and of course we have nothing but water there. And I'm really interested in what can we really focus on to support those organizations that are the best at getting something done, so that we can put our efforts, join them in our efforts, and actually get something done.
I'm going to put that one right back to you guys. You probably know more about that than I do. We're still looking. Connie Aglione, who's the co-facilitator in this OLLI class, and we are struggling trying to figure out the best way to address this. At the moment, all we really know to do is to talk to as many people as we can, especially shakers and movers like in the Democratic clubs, to talk and get the word out, and to vote and teach people how to use the request to speak system and the resist system. to weigh in on existing bills, but if anybody wants to weigh in on that one, I'm real interested in the answer to that.
Yeah, hey, nice presentation. Well, I could listen to it about 5 times to get everything out of it. Just packed full. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Now, my son is in the solar power industry, and one of the articles he sent had to do with a Department of Energy awarding a selection for solar desalinization. And what they're talking about is you can get ocean water, which the ocean level's rising, and also brackish water that's pumped up. And it seems to me that one of the things that we're missing the boat on is having an opportunity to put restrictions on mining companies or agriculture or other users to invest in bringing in clean water. And I think with that technology available and getting developed, getting awarded, some prizes, that's something that we somehow ought to be able to, press people on developing.
I think that's an awesome idea. And especially that link with the mining companies and saying, this is, okay, if you're going to do X, yeah, except I still don't want them to take that billion gallons of water a year out of the ground.
Well, yeah. No, they have to pump in their own water. They have to bring the water with them. Yeah, they're coming from Canada. Bring the water with you.
So the thing off the coast of California, yeah, I don't know how that works.
Connie, aren't there some Middle Eastern countries that use desalinization to a large degree?
I have heard that. I heard Barbara Warren talk about. She's the the head of Physicians for Social. I think she was president of it here in Arizona. Anyway, Physicians for Social Responsibility, talking about the Middle East. She was talking about Palestine and Israel, and the way she described what's going on in Palestine, where they have to use desalinization for most of their water, it's like you have to budget for your drinking water the way you budget for your groceries.
Right.
It was an enormous part of somebody's work week, their weekly allowance for needful things.
Right.
Now, were they doing it with solar? This was 5 or 6 years ago that I heard her speak. I don't know. But I do think solar is a very smart way to do desalinization. I don't know why we would do it any other way.
Yeah, they want people to develop solar technology for desalinization. I mean, it's really distillation,
Let's see, here we are. Yeah, I'm just wondering why the communities here don't impose some restrictions. We lived for a number of years in the Denver, Aurora area, and we were under water restrictions all the time. Of course, up there, most people have lawns, and so that was the big thing they were trying to control. But there's no reason why they can't control people from washing cars and using water outside, washing off sidewalks and stuff like that. I don't know why the cities don't impose restrictions.
Yeah, but remember one thing in Green Valley, I mean, I'm always impressed when I go to Green Valley because of all the, driving through a lot of the developments, all the native vegetation that's still left in place. You don't see big lawns for the most part. I really love Green Valley for that. And remember, even if you all in Green Valley turn off the tap while you're brushing your teeth, that's not going to make a big difference.
Yeah.
Where your water's going isn't, I'm not advocating anybody waste water. Now in Tucson, that is a big deal. And you're absolutely right. The more conservation that everybody can do in Tucson, they can actually make a significant difference.
Connie, tell us about your background. I think that's Santa Cruz.
Oh, sure. This is, and I'm going to just kind of lean out of the way, a little a little context first. I'm the team leader for River Watch. This is a Friends of the Santa Cruz group that we go out once a month, and we take a number of measurements. We test the discharge rate, how much flow is coming down the Santa Cruz River. We look at pH and electroconductivity. We test for E. coli, just a bunch of different things once a month. And Fosker's been doing it for 30 years. I've just been team lead for 6. But I was wandering around down there at one of our sites. Well, this is right where the Nogales Wash, we call it Potrero Creek. Sometimes it's on the map, but it hooks in with the Santa Cruz River. This is right at that. There's a pilot station right at Ruby Road as you're headed south to Nogales. And I'm here in this, I mean, it is so beautiful. There's little fish in there, this big old trees, and this really, it's always the cleanest of the water that we test. And I'm listening to the diesels just up over the bank at the pilot. So it's right at Ruby Road. You just get down to the water and then go north just a little ways. You kind of have to go around the corner. It'll blow your socks off. It's really beautiful. You could do it tomorrow, but it's a little bit of you might want to wear shoes. You can get wet. There's not a lot of water down there, but a little bit of mud right now. But yeah, Rio Rico's got some hidden gems. Thanks for asking. Okay, were there any more questions? Did we get all the chat stuff?
Oh, there was. Thank you for a very informative and important presentation from Barb. And I think it speaks for all of us. Just amazing. You did a lot of work.
Well, thank you. It's wonderful. It's always wonderful to talk to Democrats and people that I know that are easy, that completely have my values.
What do you say to the climate change deniers, or do you even waste your time? Because they're out there.
Don't waste your time.
Yeah.
Yeah, even I had an experience with another person who teaches the Ollie class, and I thought he was a skeptic, and he would bring me very legitimate questions. He would do it all very respectfully, and I would come back with a level of data that you've seen here today. I try to be very consistent about where do I get my information, and my information is always the original source, or in some cases a newspaper article headline that points us back to something that I've sourced originally. And I could speak to everything he was bringing to me, didn't move an inch, not 1 inch. And so, no, you just can't. But here's what we tell people about find common values. People will not listen to what you have to say until they feel heard themselves. So find something that you share and bond over that. And then when you're talking about climate change, find some other way other than lecture, it's some way that it impacts them. And then don't be real fussy. It's like we're working on energy efficiency, partly to promote it, partly because it is a really good thing to be promoting, and partly because you can support energy efficiency and still not believe in climate change. So sometimes you just do an end run around it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Good question, though. Good question. And we all are working on that one.
There you go.
Right.
If there's nothing else, this has been George McGaffey and
Thank you,
Paul
Rob.
McCreary. Thank you, Connie, for your great presentation.
Fantastic.
And everybody be safe, and thank you for joining us today.
Pray for
Thank
rain.
you. It was
Thank you.
wonderful.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.